Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, good afternoon. Thank you all for joining us today at CCG VIP Luncheon. The CCG VIP Luncheon series is initiated and hosted by Center for China and Globalization, CCG. This event aims to share China's latest economic policies and developments with ambassadors to China, representatives of international organizations, Chamber of Commerce, multinational corporations, international media outlets in China. It is a high-end platform for international community exchanges, providing insights into China's development and exploring global cooperation opportunities. Today's luncheon will focus on outcome of the third plenary session of the 20th Century Committee of the Communist Party of China, especially the economic and trade policy trends. We will explore related issues and conduct analysis together. We are honored to have two distinguished speakers who will share their insights and perspectives with us. First, please allow me to introduce our keynote speakers for today. They are Minister Zhu Guangyao, former Deputy Minister of Finance. Welcome, Minister Zhu. And Professor Xu Gao, Chief Economist of Bank of China International. Welcome. Before we start, let's take a moment to acknowledge some of our special guests and the VIPs. Who are they? They are Her Excellency Irit Ben Abed, Ambassador of Israel to China, His Excellency George Burri, Ambassador of Switzerland to China, His Excellency Wolfgang Diswick, Ambassador of Norway to China, His Excellency Marcos Govan, Ambassador of Brazil to China, His Excellency Hannes Hassan, Ambassador of Estonia to China, His Excellency Khalid Roman Hashimi, Ambassador of Pakistan to China, His Excellency Hussam I. Hassani, Ambassador of Jordan to China, His Excellency Pradeep Kumar Rawat, Ambassador of India to China, Her Excellency Franz Lotto Williams, Ambassador of Cyprus to China, His Excellency Dario Mihalin, Ambassador of Croatia to China, His Excellency Graham Morton, Ambassador of New Zealand to China, His Excellency Johari Oratamango, Ambassador of Indonesia to China, His Excellency Roland, Ambassador of Luxembourg to China, Her Excellency Mata Bentazo Road, Ambassador of Spain to China, and the other diplomats, the senior representatives from Embassy of Denmark, Embassy of Canada, Embassy of Japan, Embassy of the Republic of Turkey, Embassy of the United Kingdom, and the Federal Foreign Office of Germany. Also, we are so honored to have the distinguished representatives from international organizations, the head of China office of OECD Beijing office, United Nations Industry Development Organization UNIDO field office, China Light Industry Enterprises Investment and Development Association. Thank you very much for the support from the Deputy Secretary Li Yi from this association support, and the WHO representative to China as well. We're also so glad to invite different international media outlets representative to China. They are CNBC, Handelsblatt, Associated Press, Chosun Ilbo, Bloomberg News, Press Trust of India. Let's welcome all the distinguished guests. Later, we would like to invite the President and the founder of Center for China and Globalization, Dr. Huiyao Wang, to introduce our distinguished speakers. Floor is yours, Dr. Wang. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Miao. Your Excellencies, ambassadors, and of course, international representative of a different embassy, and of course the media and the business. Welcome. This is the first day after the China Mid-Autumn Festival, so it's still probably during the Mid-Autumn. I would like to say Happy Mid-Autumn Festival to every one of you. So we are here, gathered here today. I noticed in the front we are actually up. I saw the international club has upgraded their demo. In this room, we have all the previous Chinese foreign minister came meet a lot of guests, and also before they moved to the new Minister of Foreign Affairs building, this was the former Foreign Minister of Foreign Affairs spokesperson for many years here in China. Now let's welcome Ambassador from Pakistan here also. So it's really an enormous, great privilege for CCG to hold this special launching event. We also had a lot of support of the club, of the light industries association representative. Also here we have a representative from the relevant government organization is also here. So welcome all of you. And so this has really become one of the most important events in Beijing diplomatic circles, and of course international media circle and chamber and multinational circle, is because we really catch up on the latest development trend and economic forecasting for China. So we are very pleased today that we have invited the former Deputy Minister of Finance, former G20 Sherpa of Minister of Finance, Mr. Zhu Guangyao. And Mr. Zhu Guangyao and I, we were actually Council of the State Council together, colleague. And Mr. Zhu, I would like to introduce Minister Zhu first, but please go ahead with your little open appetizer and salad. We'll get into the Minister Zhu keynote during the lunch. So let me formally introduce our keynote speaker today. Minister Zhu Guangyao is the former Deputy Minister of Ministry of Finance, and he graduated from Beijing Technology and Business University in 1982. And of course, he also studied in the Graduate School of the Research Institute of the Ministry of Finance in 1985 with master degree in economics. And he was actually the director of the Research Organization Department of the Research Institute of Ministry of Finance. So he has a research background, and also Deputy Director of the Industry Department of the World Bank Department of the Ministry of Finance. Has done many years of World Bank activities. And of course, also, he's the Director of Agriculture Development of the World Bank Department and the Ministry of Finance. And actually, he actually served as a Deputy Director of the Debt Department of the Ministry of Finance, the Director of International Department also of the Ministry of Finance. So he has served many different portfolios at the Ministry of Finance. And also quite important, he was the Executive Director of China to the World Bank, and also, again, served as the Assistant Minister of Ministry of Finance, Deputy Minister of Ministry of Finance, and has been engaged in international financial diplomacy for a long time. I remember during the G20, Hangzhou G20 2016, Minister Zhu was actually a spokesperson and a G20 Sherpa, very active, and and he also, as a Council of the State Council, has also advised the central government. I'm very honored to be a colleague of Minister Zhu during those years. So without further ado, I would like to invite Minister Zhu to give a talk. We want to talk about what has happened after third plan of 20th Party Congress, but also, more importantly, what's the future and what's going to come for all of us here in China. We would also like to have more time after Minister Zhu and Mr. Xu's speech to have some roundtables. You can raise questions. We hope that you enjoy Minister Zhu keynote. So, Minister Zhu, let's welcome.
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It's my great honor to join this lunch meeting. And I'm glad to see my old friend, that's Brazil ambassador. He is my longtime corporate friend. We have many years cooperation, but we have many debates. And something he is certainly right, and we see the history. And now I'm very happy to report you about what's my learning experience about the third plenary document of 20th CPC Central Committee. And I know you are all very important person to understand international affairs, and many of you familiar with economic situation. I understand you hate to learn something as education. So without draft, I would like to report you about my learning experience about third plenary document. My understanding is very two key points. One document is very important for China, particularly for Chinese economic development. Second one is very important for the whole world. Why? Because China today is the second largest economy. 2023, Chinese economy is 17.66 trillion US dollar. How much US? US is 27.36 trillion. We see the China-US still the gap. However, China certainly is with fast development since opening up policy adopted in 1978. That time, Chinese economy total amount just 150 billion US dollar. And now is 17.66 trillion. We see that's a big amount and a big development. However, we understand still many challenges ahead. And we face that challenge, including now that's local government debt issue, real estate market stabilization issue, small, medium-sized enterprise, financial enterprise issue. We must insist on development. That hard development is a real story. That's our experience from long time reform and opening up policy. And the third plenary meeting set up very clear three important points. Point number one is 5 years from now to 2029. All tasks set up by plenary meeting must be complete. That's including more than 300 tasks for reform and opening up policy. And the second point is 2035. That's very important year for China. According to the goal set up by Chinese Communist Party, that year China will be basically realize the economic modernization. What's standard? That's very key 2 points. One is the total GDP should be doubled by 2020. And that's 15 years ago. The Chinese economy will be from 2020s. How much that time? That's 100 trillion renminbi. By 2035, this amount should be 200 trillion renminbi. That's a doubled amount. And the per capita GDP should be doubled too. That's based on 10,000 US dollar to $20,000. That's our goal. That's very challenging. we must be realize this goal. And with 15 years, double economy amount, that means from 2020 to 2035, every year Chinese economic growth should be 4.7%. Now, near 5 years past, we can see 2021, Chinese economy growth is 8.1%. 2022 is 3%. And last year is 5.2%. This year, our goal is 5%. With 4 years average, that's 5.4%. So that means the 14th 5 years plan period will be finished next year. After that, we should have every year average growth is about 4.3%. With this growth, we can reach the goal set up by plenary meeting. Challenge, yes, is very huge. We must insist on structural reform and opening up policy. So if we reach that 2035 goal, that's big foundation being made for 2050. That means the People's Republic of China established 100 years. China will go to the modernized socialist country. We have that confidence. We know that the challenge is how much big. This is my first point. Why this plenary meeting is so important for China. My second point, why this plenary meeting is so important for the whole world. I think that's most fundamental important in this meeting reiterate China will insist on opening up policy. Open to the outside world is China's basic national policy. This is very important for China, also important for the world. We recognize now globally we face many challenges, including the protectionism. And such kind of challenge we must work together to deal with. However, we understand there's some difficult job ahead. And if the global economic production line and the supply chain be separate, and that's a big loss for global economy. Everybody know last year, 2023, global GDP is 105 trillion US dollar. And the global good transaction is 48 trillion US dollar. Global service amount transaction is 15 trillion US dollar. Goods plus service total is 63 trillion US dollar. Thus, China and the US is very important. That's both US and China. Each country's total amount of goods and service is about 6.86 trillion. Basically same, because that's China, the goods service, good output, good transaction is larger than US, but US is largely in transaction in service. So if plus good and service together, both country and China, US basically same. So important, that's China-US relation. Last year, China-US trade relation, total amount is 664 trillion US dollar. But the warning signal is that figure is down about 11%. why I think that's a problem between China and the US. Firstly, if largely to say from global perspective, what kind of negative impact if there's two different supply chain and the production chain? According to International Monetary Fund, there's a global loss will be 7% to 12%. This MF figure, that means 7 trillion to 12 trillion US dollar loss. So that's really warning the global cooperation, particularly major economies, must be back to right track to understand each other through the communication, through the negotiation. And just before the lunch, I talked with the India ambassador about Chinese development since opening up and reform. And the very key experience for China is development of infrastructure. And that time, bottom up for Chinese economic development is energy and transportation. Now we have big development. However, now we are in digital economy. We are in new time, and both new infrastructure and that's data center, and also the cable connection, particularly marine optical cable connects the different continents. It's so important. According to UN figure, more than 99% of data flowing through the different continents is through the marine optical cable. But unfortunately, US 2020 cleaning network program made some difference. And I really worry about if there's disconnection, that's a very negative impact to the global economy, particularly in the time of digital economy. And also, according to UN figure, 49% data transaction in North America, and 24% of data transaction in Europe, 20% of data transaction in East Asia. In China, is 9%. If disconnect, the US will lose 12%, from 49 to 37. China will lose 2%, from 9 to 7%. This is UN figure. You can check. And that reminds us in the digital time how important the world, whole countries together, and particularly major economies. And one thing I worry about is the recent WTO negotiation. Yes, that's a progress made on e-commerce, but finally, US not join signing the document because under some concern. And last October, US withdraw long-term policy request for freely board data crossing and no local storage of data policy. And this is changed policy. We must work together to discuss the new situation, to deal with the new challenge. Although the many difference, but we understand we have common goal, including environment protection. We must work together. So I know I spoke too much. I stop here. I would like to answer a question. and I understand there's many discussion need, particularly at today's situation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister Zhou, for your excellent opening speech. Actually, it's great. I mean, you outlined a lot of a trend, a lot of development data. Actually, also, you know, the third plan, and of course, 5 years we're going to finish the 5 years plan by next year. All those things looks encouraging. I'm sure there will be a lot of questions later. We'll discuss a roundtable. And also you mentioned about, of course, the geopolitical climate is not really productive for the world economy. I mean, that's really, we have to improve the relations between, particularly China and the US. We just recently had the Xiangshan Forum. I see there's more dialogues has been happening. But also you talk about WTO. I was just coming back from Geneva, WTO Public Forum a few days ago, and we organized an event there on how we can harness or leverage on the China green development for the benefit of the world. We invited the former Foreign Minister Yi Xiaozhen, DDJ of WTO, former DDJ, and of course the President of Peters Institute, and also the former Foreign Minister of Kenya, and of course Trade Minister, and of course the think tank from Pascalami. So we had a very good, productive discussion there. So I'm sure there will be a lot of talks later at the roundtable while we're having this beautiful environment of lunch. But now I'd like to really introduce our next speaker, which is I'm sure you have heard him before. He's the Mr. Xu Gao. He's the Chief Economist of Bank of China International Limited. So Mr. Xu is the Chief Economist of Bank of China International Limited. He's an adjunct professor at the National School of Development at Peking University. And of course, Professor Xu previously worked as a Chief Economist at Everbright Security Asset Management. And he was also a senior economist at the UBS in Beijing and economist at the World Bank in Beijing. So I'm sure he'll give his unique perspective to enrich our discussion later. So let's welcome Professor Xu, please.
Thank you, President Wang, and I'm very honored to be here to share my views about the Chinese economy with you. And because I work for a security house, so I will bring some perspective from the market. And I will briefly talk about three things. One is the current developments of the Chinese economy, especially in this year. Second is the China's debt situation. And third is Sino-US relationship. And so come to the first. I think we all know that Chinese economy is under heavy downward pressures in this year. And I believe some decisive demand-side stimulus packages needed to put Chinese economy back on track. You know that in the third quarter of this year, China's GDP growth has fallen to 4.7%, which is lower than the 5% GDP target set for this year. And according to the current developments in the third quarter, we believe that it's very likely that the GDP growth in the second half of this year will be lower than 5%. So there's a good chance that China will miss the 5% growth target in this year, but not that much. And the market consensus for the GDP growth of this year is about 4.8%. It's still around 5%, but it's lower than 5%. And if you look at the economic indicator, actually, the elephant in the room is definitely the property market. Because if you look at the external demand, actually China has did a very good job in exporting in the first several months of the year. Actually, the export growth in the first half of the year beat the market consensus. If you look at the inside, you know, everybody knows that China's consumption growth is not that strong, but that is I think it's a natural outcome because consumption is mainly determined by the income, household income, and the household's forecast for prospects for the future income. So if the economic is in a downward trend, I think it's natural for the consumption to be weak. But if you look at the investment, actually China's investment mainly made by three main parts: manufacturing investment, infrastructure investment, and property investment. And these three combined account for about 80% of China's total FAI. And in the first half of this year, actually, growth of manufacturing investment and the infrastructure investment was not that bad. Actually, the growth rate is higher than the average growth rate before the pandemic. But in the meantime, we see the property market continue to contract. Property investment declined by about 10% in the first half of this year, and that is why China is facing these huge downward pressures. And the property market, I think, is the downward pressure of the property market is mainly a result of the credit crunch towards the property market. Actually, since year 2021, total funding flowing to property market, especially flowing to the property developers, has been halved. I think for any sector, if you halve its funding, naturally it will have some problem. And that credit crunch has played a toll on China's property market. So the basic conclusion is that actually the housing demand of the Chinese people is still there, but they just don't dare not to buy houses, especially new houses, because they're afraid of the credit risk of the property developers, and they're afraid that their houses cannot be delivered because there's a good chance that some of the property developers will go bankruptcy. So if we can curb the credit risk in the property market, I think we can restore confidence of the potential house buyers and restore the market transaction in the property market. And in order to do that, actually, now the property market is in a kind of market failure, which means that if you do not give some external force, the market cannot go back to its normal situation. So I think some kind of stimulus package, especially fiscal stimulus package, is needed to restore confidence not only in the property market but also in the whole economy. And I believe as the Chinese economy continues to face heavy downward pressures, I think that kind of stimulus policies will be more likely in the coming quarters. That's the first thing I want to make. First point I want to make. Then I will talk about China's debt situation. You know, I don't say debt problem or debt crisis because I think the China's debt situation does not necessarily lead to a problem, not to mention a crisis. If you look at the data compiled by the Bank of International Settlement, China's overall debt to GDP ratio has reached 280%. That is higher than the average of the developed countries, not to mention emerging markets. And if you look at trend, actually the upward trend is very clear and is likely to continue. So if you have so much debt, I think it's natural for people to worry about a possible debt crisis. And that's why Chinese policymakers have implemented some of the deleveraging policies in the recent years. But I think we cannot jump to the conclusion that fast. Okay, it is true that China have a huge domestic debt, higher than the average level of the advanced economies. But don't worry, China's saving rate is much higher than the rest of the world. China's saving rate is about 44%. That is about as 2 times as the international average. And China's financial market is also dominated by the debt instruments. China's total social financing, that is an indicator compiled by the PBOC, that measures all the funding flow from the financial market to the real economy. And about 70% of China's total social financing is made up by bank lending. And another 30% of the total social financing made by bond financing, which means over 95% of China's total social financing are debt instruments. So you have a saving rate of over 40%, and you translate 40% of your GDP into investment through this debt instrument-dominated financial structure. It is inevitable that you will have higher debt ratio. So the higher debt ratio of China is a result of China's very high saving rate. And I don't have time to explain why China have so much saving, but I think the conclusion is clear that in the foreseeable future, China will continue to have very high saving rate. So I think China, it makes a lot of sense for China to have more debt. And another thing that if you evaluate the debt crisis, the potential, the debt crisis, threat of debt crisis of a country, domestic debt level is not that important. Actually, the tight constraint for a country, the tight debt constraint for a country is its external debt, not its domestic debt. So if you look at China's balance payment, we have balance payment surplus for many years. If you look at the international investment position, China now has net foreign assets amount to $2.9 trillion. That is that's the foreign assets owned by China minus China's foreign liability, $2.9 trillion. So if you think that China has accumulated too much debt within its economy, don't forget that China has lent $2.9 trillion to the rest of the world. So I don't think debt crisis is something we should worry about. Of course, we should have some structured policies to have a more reasonable leveraging, which means that we should put debt to more productive fronts. But for China, for the Chinese economy as a whole, I think it makes a lot of sense for China to have more debt. And the deleveraging policies, if you implement that too harsh, you will have the problem we're facing now. And the third point I want to make is about the U.S.-China relationship. We all know that there is some kind of trade frictions between U.S. and China. I think that is just a footnote to the long-lasting debate about the global imbalances especially between U.S. and China, that has been last for 20 years. So we have this symmetric external imbalance between U.S. and China. So China has a lot of current account surplus, and the U.S. has a lot of current account deficit. But there's an old China saying that it takes two hands to make a clap. So we always blame China for China should rebalance the economy from this investment-driven model to a consumption-driven model. I think that is true. China should rebalance its economy. But in the meantime, the United States should also rebalance its economy to a more production-driven growth model. And if you look at U.S. current account surplus, actually, in the last 20 years, so from year 2001 to 2023, the total U.S. current account surplus deficit amounts to $12 trillion U.S. dollars. So U.S. as a whole is a benefit a lot from the globalization. But the problem is, U.S. cannot distribute the profit he got from the globalization evenly within its economy. So we see this widening income gap within the United States. Some people, so rich guys in the United States, they benefit a lot from the globalization. But in the meantime, some people like the redneck, this ordinary workers, they suffer a lot. And I think that there's another old saying in China: external factors play a role through internal factors. So if United States have a better income distribution, I think so distribute its globalization dividend more evenly within its economy, I don't think the United States will have problem. It has in recent years. So I think it is true that China should rebalance its economy, and the Chinese policymakers have done a lot to do that, but it takes time. I think the high saving growth model of China is mainly a result of China's income distribution too, which means if you want to rebalance China to consumption-driven model, you should increase China's household income as a share of China's GDP. And Chinese policymakers have done a lot to do that, but it takes time. And in the meantime, the United States should also acknowledge that they have something wrong within its own economy, and to do something, especially on the income distribution, to fix this problem. And if the United States and China can do that, I think we will have a more balanced and more sustainable U.S.-China relationship in the future. And I will stop here, and I'll be happy to take questions after. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Xu. And so while we're having this dinner, we're also enjoying this food for thought. I think you summarized quite well. And of course, first of China, of course, has need more investment. I mean, the debt issue is not that serious if you compare the saving rate, if you compare the international lending scale, and China is still one of the largest treasury buyer of the United States, for example. So I think absolutely right. We need to boost the confidence to more spending. And of course, the second, of course, the real estate market. The real estate market is really, I think that probably is one of the main items I see. It drives up 20-30% of related industry around China for the GDP growth. But actually, you see that I saw in the third plenum, there's some new movement. For example, they talk about land farmers to lend their household land. It is now. And now the cities for about 5 million to 3 million, it's totally free for any migrant workers to apply to live in the cities. So I'm even bold to think that we should really consider to allow the 300 million migrant workers to sell their household land, and if allow the people in the cities to go to the countryside to buy that land to really stimulate the circulation between urban and rural. That probably will encourage the Chinese real estate to have more stability in the future. So that's something we're still promoting as a policy. But I think we're not talking about all the farmers selling their land. We're talking about only the 300 million migrant workers who has a legitimate job and protection in the city that they're allowed to sell their land and give them the certificate of the household land to really get their first capital to move in, to settle down in the cities. So that's 300 million migrant workers. It's a gold mine, I think, that China can tap into. Finally, talk about China-US relation. Of course, China-US relation is crucial. And, all those sanctions and all those, high fines, small yard doesn't really help. I think it's hurt both countries and the rest of the world. So we hope to hear more from our roundtable discussion now. And we have a slightly modified format of this CCG VIP Luncheon. So we have about an hour to have a Q&A while we're having dinner, lunch. We can have all the ambassadors. We have over 16 ambassadors, another deputy heads of mission, counselors from another 5-6 embassies, and another 5-6 from international organizations. So it's really a high-power lunch table we're here, and also representative of media, the international media here. So let's have a Q&A. I would like to ask you to raise your questions and also brief comment as well, but also report who you are and where you're from, and let's get right away into the Q&A section of this most interesting part of our luncheon. Thank you. Yeah. So you can raise your hand or your name tag if you want to have a comment or a question. Yes. So Ambassador from Israel, please.
Okay. So first and foremost, thank you for this interesting introduction. I'd like to ask, as you spoke about the growth of the Chinese economy, and as we all know, the major growth the Chinese economy generates from the exports that China has. They are growing last month. Exports grew, I think, by 8.5%, which is quite dramatic. Now, on the other hand, we see a lot of countries around the world having all these tariffs now, starting from the US down to even Indonesia, seeking indigenous clusters. So, how does China seize the next few years when the world, Henry, you spoke about WTO, right? The world is slowly drifting away from globalization, and there's a lot of tariffs that are affecting everyone, and travel sanctions, etc. How is China thinking of its growth in the next couple of years when there's such a big problem of open trade and globalization is not?
Okay, maybe we'll take the three questions as one group. Ambassador from Muslim group, please.
I have a long point.
You can mention your name.
Thank you so much. My name is Rob Ryland. I'm the ambassador of Luxembourg. For me, it's the second time to be posted in China. I was here a couple of years ago as a deputy head of mission. Now I've been back for a year. So I've been watching China for a while. Thank you, first of all, for the kind invitation. Thank you for the interesting speeches, which I think are framing the discussion. First of all, Minister Zhu, you gave us a little bit of a framework with the goals. And secondly, Professor Xu, you gave us a little bit where we stand now in terms of imbalances. So my question would be, referring to the next 5-year plan, the 15th 5-year plan, and drawing a little bit also of what my colleague, Ambassador Ben Abba just mentioned, what should be the priorities for the Chinese economy in the next 5-year plan? Would it be going on, so the graduation from a typical, from a view of a development economist, trying to overcome this middle income trap and move into a high-end economy, what we have seen now in the last priorities, building up on that, would that generate enough growth to attain the targets that you mentioned, Minister Zhu? And secondly, Professor Xu, what should be the priorities in the next 5-year plans to deal with the imbalances? So the high savings rate, how to go about that? What should be the priorities? And I think you made an interesting link here between the high savings rate and the debt situation. So how to address these imbalances in the next 5-year plan? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Ambassador from Luxembourg. But we have a string around. Let's have Ambassador from Switzerland, Ambassador Guru.
Thank you. And you said 3 questions. He asked 2, so I thought I'd take another one. So that's the 4th question. First, Minister Xu and Professor, Minister Xu and Professor Xu, many thanks for your most interesting assessment. You gave us lots of background, figures, and perspectives to the, I would say, 3 most often mentioned economic issues that we both observe here in China, which is the trade part, which is the real estate part, and which is the consumption part. The real estate part, that's a really big baby, and I think everybody is very concerned about it. And it was really good to hear you and your insights about it. The trade part, you know, Switzerland is one of these countries that has actually waived tariffs because we demonstrate that we are free traders. And, but we all know that this is not a trade issue, this is a political issue. And we just call upon all parties to figure that out, because it serves us best if we are free traders, if all are free traders. The third issue, the consumption issue, you have to help me on that one. I've been observing China and I am in the lucky position that we not only deal with savings, with banks, but we also deal with consumptions. For example, Nestle or watchmakers. And what I hear is that there is a big cultural effect in China. That, for example, not less watches are sold to cheaper ones. And when I go to a good hotel, like the St. Regis, I notice that the hotel is sometimes full and the restaurant is empty, but the street food outside is booming. So I could bring more examples, of course. Do you have a perspective on whether the Chinese really are consuming less in the sense of less transactions, or are the Chinese just becoming more, let's say, not fascinated of the glory of the expensive Western product, but quality driven, and so, which would mean number of transactions the same, turnover lower, and therefore consumption lower. Thank you.
Okay, great. Another good question.
About economic situation in China, particularly in the next 5 years, that's very crucial. And domestically and internationally, we know that's face a very complicated situation. And for trade issue, and I still want to emphasize the service, because last year, total global goods transaction in US dollar term is negative 5%. However, the service trade is 9% increase. That reflects the changing situation, digital economic development. If you say what that's driven for the next 5 years, I will answer that's innovation, particularly digital economy development. The China now, the 43.3% digitalization for whole industry. That's real amount is 7.5 trillion US dollar. We are the second large digital economy. However, we understand that 43.3% is largely like the US, Germany, UK. That's all more than 60%. I think that's Israel is more higher than 60%. So innovation is a real way to promote digitalization in China. We really hope that will greatly enhance productivity, particularly that's we call that's not real production, also increase the contribution by technology. And according to 15-5-year plan, so we think that's a very crucial time, because we have that's a 2035 year goal. That 2035, that should be double economic and capital GDP more than based on 2020 figure. That's for 15-5-year period, China economic growth should keep at 4.5% to 5%, because I report you after that, really 4.3 4.3% growth average to 2035. We can reach the goal, but we should give more leeway or room for last 10 years. So that's for 15-5-year period. And I wish the 4.5 to 5% growth is necessary. But that figure should be decided by both Congress next year. So next year is the last year of 14th 5-year plan period. So I think that's based on 4 years, we reached as average growth at 5.4%, and the next year is 4.5 to 5%. Is last year. It can be satisfied. And the real economy and the digital economy, I think that's so important for China. But we must understand how to based on real condition, to particularly local condition, to develop digital economy. Is very, very important. And now we have that real full-scale base for industry side, and enhance productivity is very, very important. Full sector productivity, we hope that can be back to 1.5% to 2%. We know that's not easy, but the real hope is innovation. It's AI development. And now we have this good base for very large practice scale. And we hope the innovation can contribute to China economic development fasterly and largely, and that's based on international cooperation, particularly digitalized society needs that global connection, information connection, and people can also very important. So that's why I think very open, very frank. Even some different opinions should be put on the table for discussion. So that related issue is that clean energy and EV industry now as US, EU, and Canada together is very high percent of tariff, 100%. I think that's a damage both for China and also for receiving countries because the environment goal and the Paris Club goal side, that's 2 degrees, or most likely reach 1.5 degree temperature degree higher than before industrialization. That's really global efforts. I think that American EU friends should be think about how to realize that goal, how to put our efforts back on the right track. That's our common goal to protect our living this earth. That's so important. I stop here.
Professor Xu.
Ambassador Freeland and Ambassador Arias' question about consumption are related, so I will answer them together. China's consumption rate is about 44%, which means the China's saving rate. So China's consumption rate is about 56%, and that is household consumption and government consumption. And in order to rebalance China to a consumption-driven growth model, I think what we need is very clear to increase household consumption. And in order to do that, you should increase household income as share of China's GDP. Now, China's household total disposable income of China's household sector to GDP ratio is only 60%. And household always need to have some savings. So if you have only 60% of China's GDP as disposable income, it's very hard for the household in China to increase income. Increase consumption. So I think what we really need to do in the next 5-year plan is to adjust China's income distribution between three main sectors of China. There is a household sector, corporate sector, and government sector, and increase the total disposable income of household sector as a whole to GDP ratio. And in order to do that, there are a lot of people now suggesting that we just government just give money to the household. And that's one way to deal with that. And another way is the proposal I proposed last year is that to channel the rate return of the state-owned assets to household sector. So after all, so to summarize, I think to rebalance Chinese economy, you need to increase household income. That's the key thing we should do. But as I said before, it takes time because you can imagine how hard it would be. All the structural reforms are needed to rebalance the income distribution. So before we make substantial progress on that front, I think China will, for a long period of time, to rely on investment as a main engine to create demand. If you do not have very strong consumption, and you also do not have strong investment, you will have insufficient demand and will have long-lasting deflation, just like China experienced during the year 1998 to 2008. 2002, we have 5-year deflation in that period of time. And so I think that to boost the Chinese economy, to maintain a stable growth in the short run, I think what China should do is to adjust its deleveraging policies and do some policy stimulus to boost demand, especially to boost investment demand. And back to the Ambassador's question about the consumption, I think now we see there is a signs that the Chinese ordinary people they do not consume that more. I think that is more like a cyclical problem, because you have falling GDP growth, falling income of household income, and falling expectation for future job security and future income. It's natural for China's consumers to consume less and to do more precautionary savings. So there's a lot of people, especially on China's social media, a lot of people are talking about China's consumption downgrade. Maybe in the past they may go to luxury restaurants, but now they just go to the sidewalk food stores to buy some cheap food. So I think if we can stimulate Chinese economy to a more decent level, and especially if we can revitalize China's ordinary people's expectation about the future, I think that kind of cyclical downturn of the Chinese consumption will gradually phase out, and Chinese people will continue its trend in several decades of this consumption upgrade. So the consumption downgrade is, I think, more like a cyclical problem. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, great. Thank you, Professor Xu. Of course, Minister Zhu. Yeah, I will pick the next round question, but I would like to add a bit as well. I think China is really in the recovery period. Remember, we are just getting out of 3 years of COVID lockdown, which is very heavily heated the Chinese economy. And of course, now we are actually seeing a lot of recovery. For example, tourism is recovering. For example, this morning I just read for the Chinese Mid-Autumn Festival this year, the domestic traffic is coming up 37%. It's enormous. And of course, we're seeing more international tourists coming back. We have opened a visa for 15 European countries. I would like to see for 27 EU countries open visa-free. And even more. I mean, the 59 countries can go to Thailand for 1 month. Maybe we should apply that market finance throughout China. So many things government can do. But I think the economy, the EV cars and solar panels and all those things, new technologies is coming. That offsets a bit of real estate downturn. But again, I think 70% of Chinese citizens' wealth is on real estate. So if the reason is coming down, everybody's hold his wallet tight to the chest and not spending more. I think that probably take a few years to recover that. And one of the suggestions I made is that we should really give the 300 million migrant workers let them to sell their household land, and then so they can stimulate domestic urban consumption, which is great. So I see every 10 years China always has a breakthrough. For example, in the 80s, the contract land to the farmers to grow whatever they like. They changed the Chinese economy from a shortage to abundance. 90s, the Chinese government allowed allocate all the flats for the urban residents free almost. They created 400 million middle class. Year 2000, when they joined WTO, they had a handful of SOEs doing the trade. Now 6 million Chinese foreign companies are doing trade. China is not the largest trading nation in the world. Now we are waiting for some breakthrough policy like 300 million migrant workers allow them to trade in their house or land for urban residency. So that is really good. Now I see we have the next round. I have Ambassador Graham Bolton from New Zealand. You're first, and I have Ambassador from Brazil, and I'll also media friends too. Okay. Let's have 3 quick questions. And also, I have 3 ambassadors first. But Ambassador Bolton first.
Thank you, Henry, and thank you, Minister Zhu and Professor Xu. It's been very interesting, both your presentations and your answers to the questions so far. I know there's been a lot of international and Chinese focus in recent times on industrial matters, on industrial subsidies and industrial tariffs. What I was interested in, that's interesting, but I'd be interested in a little bit of thinking around agricultural subsidies. At the moment, 80% of the world's agricultural subsidies are levied by, are provided by China, India, the United States, and the EU together. And China is the largest declared subsidy provider. I'm just wondering, as you look into the next 5-year plans, both the execution of the current plenum outcomes and also into the future 5-year plans, what role do you see for subsidies in the way that the Chinese government looks to influence behaviour? Because we hear a lot about the market, and we hear a lot about the reform and opening up, and we hear a lot about reform, but reform to us would indicate a change over time in method as well, including more reliance, perhaps long-term, on the decisions that people are making in response to market conditions. And that would indicate to us that you have to allow people to feel market conditions, and that would over time lead to a reduction in subsidies. But I'd be interested in your views and about how this can actually occur through the Chinese system.
Okay, thank you, Ambassador Morton. And then Ambassador Galvin, please. And then Ambassador from Indonesia next.
Thank you, Henry, and glad to meet my friend, Mr. Zhu here. We worked together back in the aftermath of the financial crisis when he was China's chief financial negotiator for years. It was a very different context, unlike what is happening today that both our speakers mentioned, in which, let's say, the global economy is a drag on the domestic economy. In those days, there was an unprecedented getting together the political will to draw us out of the crisis. So in the space, for example, of 2 years between November 2008 and November 2010, there were 5 G20 summits. So not even at the end of the Second World War was there such a mobilization of political will globally to face a crisis situation than what we had back in 2008, 2010 crisis. But fast forward to today, and between then and today, we've seen nothing similar. On the contrary, the international dimension is a drag on economic growth. And this affects not only the economy, the largest and most relevant economies that occupy the headlines, it affects the whole world economy. So we have an international dysfunctional community today that we're not into helping each other, into the emphasis is on competition and attrition, etc., etc. That we all know. But I have a practical question to Professor Xu, which he mentioned, Professor, that it is difficult, the rebalancing process between the three, let's say, legs of your income distribution is difficult between corporate, household, and government. What are the differences? It's really a question because I don't know the answer. What are the main difficulties into transferring more income towards households?
Okay. Thank you, Ambassador Galva from Brazil. And Brazil is going to be the G20 host this year. Very important. And we were just at Delegates Guest House. You and Vice President Han Zheng of China is having a celebration of 50 years anniversary 2 nights ago. So really enjoying it. Now I'd like to have Ambassador from Indonesia, Otomago. You hosted the G20 last year. 2 years ago. Yeah, 3 years anniversary. So very important. Indonesia is getting more and more important. Your question, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Minister Xu and Chief Economist Xu. Yes, of course, Ambassador here, we follow closely the Chinese economy as well. In particular, pay attention, I call it tourism economy. How you generate your tourism economy during the Labor Day holiday, and then recently mid-autumn, and then of course in October will be the national, and then of course next year. How Harbin, city like Harbin, Chongqing, Shanghai, Xiamen, Fuzhou, Shanghai, Beijing, generate the local economy, the tourism economy. But my question is, because I need to know this one, both of you are economists, the economic perspective. You are mentioning about your relation with the United States from the economic perspective. What will be your perspective on your relation with European Union, BRICS country? They are having a summit as well. Africa, because we just finished the forum on China and Africa. And then of course, Japan and Korea, they're quite big economies as well. Brazil and India. And then ASEAN, because for the last 3 years, ASEAN is the largest economy of China, both sides. So how do you see, or from the economic perspective, it will contribute as well, get a win-win solution to your economy and to our economy as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. ASEAN is the biggest trading partner of China, very important. So we'll have this round, and we have next round with our immediate president. Now, Mr. Zhu.
Thank you very much. I think that's for the issue regarding subsidy, industry subsidy. Now it's very important. That's also related some global discussion over capacity issue. So I really hope that such kind of very frank discussion can help us to understand that's the challenge and to see how we work together to deal with that. And for industry subsidy, now I think that's the US now is the number 1. And there are 2 acts that's 2 years August passed by the United States, the CHIP and the Science Act and the Inflation Reduction Act. And the fourth one, total amount is $280 billion US. And among that, 52 billion US dollar used for subsidy to support the cheap advanced companies in the United States. And the precondition is any company, if that's got subsidy from US government, there's no investment in China for cheap factory building for 10 years. And now, even there's some that's just strengthen already established factories. And that's very, very clear. That's industry policy and with specific target. And another act is the Inflation Reduction Act. The total amount $740 billion. And among it, I think that's amount 349 billion used for subsidy for support new energy development, and for EV per car can get 7,500 subsidy, but precondition is the US production and North American trade zone area production. And it's very clear there's direct large amount industry subsidy, and how to deal with that. I think that's we will see what kind of way we can deal with that. You also mentioned that there's agricultural subsidy. Certainly, that's global concern. China also concerned that in WTO we support to discuss agricultural subsidy issue, and that's in next 5 years plan. We certainly will focus on innovation and use the market way. That's already outlined in third plenary document. We will build a high-level socialist market system. That's very important. That's why China insists on open up to the outside world as basic national policy at current challenge. Global situation is so important, and I wish globally we can have that joint action, and we work together to deal with that. And just use as a protection way, no any help for global efforts to deal with the global climate crisis. So, and we understand no too much time left for human beings. And regarding, fourthly, I thank Ambassador very much emphasize 2008-2010, that's period we worked together to deal with the financial crisis. Then that's followed by European debt issue. That's very, very close cooperation. And also I thank him to help us to understand some that's real challenge China must learn from international society. And at that time we discussed that in balance payment issue 4%, and Ambassador educated me, you should agree 4%. I think that's the history approved. You are right, and thank you very much. Regarding that's a very, very important issue, Ambassador from Indonesia raised. And fourthly, I should say the ASEAN is the #1 trade partner. Recently, that's developed very quickly relation between China and ASEAN, particularly under the framework ASEAN EP. We hope that's a mutual benefit. We understand China says you have that's more than 100 billion trade surplus. We should work together to enhance cooperation to make that mutual benefit. And we think that's a very, very important mutual understanding and mutual cooperation. That's very, including China's investment in ASEAN countries. Regarding more broadly relation, China is as a key economic partners from United States to Europe to Japan to also, of course, ASEAN is very important. I think that for US now is a real challenge we face is how we insist on mutual respect, coexist, and make that final win-win result. And now we really have challenges. For a long time, I working for China-US economic relation as a shaper from SED, Strategic Economic Dialogue, set up in 2006, and that's the shaper. And until 2016, we have this economic comprehensive dialogue. That's the first year of Trump. We basically through that mechanism to deal with the challenge, and anytime both sides can make that phone call anytime and easily. But now I think that's some difficult because that's my personal view still have some problem with the mechanism around it. We should have that more comprehensive, but now it's some separate. US side maybe is okay. That's some concentrate on treasury or in commerce, but in China there's a different department in charge of different job, so that to deal. My understanding is more comprehensive coordinated benefit for both sides, at least economically. And Europe certainly is very, very important. I really hope through the communication and the negotiation, some difference can be overcome. And same thing to Japan. And the Japanese economy last year from second one becomes third one just because that's US dollar is strong, Japanese yuan is weak. But now Japanese yuan today 141. I think that's colleagues remember that's during 1985 Plaza Agreement. That time that's $1 equal to 140 Japanese yuan. And now it's the same thing as that already. So how about Japanese economy development? Is very important in Asia, also very large impact global financial market. We should be very careful, and that means we must strengthen the communication. Just about side, G20 is a very, very key role to play. This year, Brazil is championship. 2 years ago, Indonesia played this championship. Very, very important. I hope that some communication way can be effectively function and to promote understanding in other countries, particularly just the mission that's groups. They're so important for global development and peace. And not maybe some days later in UN future summit, we hope in UN side can have some discussion, contribute to the international cooperation.
Great, thank you. Mr. Zhu mentioned about China-US relation with the strategic dialogue many times. Absolutely important. We still maintain that dialogue. Now it seems that we have a very important dialogue in G20. We hope that the G20 in Brazil this year, President Xi and President Biden have another one too, probably. And of course, at many levels, like Shanghai dialogue, defense, trade, finance, climate. So let's have all this dialogue. It's absolutely important. Professor Xu.
Well, regarding Ambassador Yao's question about the balance in China, I think I can think about two main critical issues. One is the lack of consensus. I gave you my story about China's insufficient consumption as the insufficient also income. But I think my story is pretty convincing, but there are other stories. For example, some people believe that the China's insufficient consumption is the result of China's not very good social safety net. If you worry about your future, worry about your future income and all the things, you will definitely have a lot of precautionary safety. That's another story. And there's another story. Some people believe that there's insufficient consumption as a result of supply bottlenecks. For example, we have supply bottlenecks on education, on health care. So some people, they believe that Chinese people, they want to consume, but they just don't have enough supply to consume. That's another story. So if you look at this problem from the perspective of policymakers, you have all this kind of different stories. I think it's very hard for this policymaker to make up his mind to what is something we should do. That's, I think, the one difficulty. Another one is, I think, to rebalance China's economy to a consumption growth model. I think it requires some substantial shift in policymakers' mindset. Well, actually, I agree with President Wang's proposal that we should just let these migrant workers just sell their land in urban area, in the rural area, so that's how they can successfully transform from a rural worker to an urban worker. But that kind of proposal can be regarded as kind of privatization of collective-owned land. And privatization, as you may know, is something that we cannot talk about very often in the public debate area. So if you want to increase households' income, and this income should come from somewhere. And the main question, from who? From where? From who? I think if you want to increase households' income, you will definitely have a lower income of the government, or broadly speaking, of the state-owned sectors. And the state-owned sectors, traditionally, they're regarded as a commodity highest, regarded as the means to control the economy, control the country. And if you have that kind of mindset, it's very hard for you to just give up all these resources, what's income, to other people. And you will feel afraid that you will lose control of the economy and the country. So I think successful balance of China's consumption, China's growth model, I think, requires successful balance of mindset, and that takes a long time. That's my answer.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Xu. You echoed my point, but I absolutely, I think the pressure is there that we need to really go forward, and particularly if we can stabilize the real estate market. The migrant workers, 300 million migrant workers. I'm not talking about 700 million rural population, but just 300 million migrant workers can able to sell their household land. Then they can really reinvest into this urban real estate that can boost the Chinese economy. And the government can introduce the property tax, where the founding of the government can have a stable income like all the developed countries. That is really I'm actually looking forward to stimulate the economy. I know that Martin and a few others in the UN represent has a question, but also of media friends. So let's have another round of questions. Perhaps, introduce yourself. We'll have a photo section at the end of this.
Thank you very much. My name is Martin Taylor. I'm the World Health Organization representative here in China. Thank you, CCG, for organising this very interesting luncheon discussion, and to Minister Zhu and Professor Xu for sharing your perspectives on the Chinese economy. One of the discussions has been around boosting domestic consumption, and Professor Xu, you just touched on your last answer about the issue of social safety nets. And I note that the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, in their Article 4 consultations recently also recommended expanding health insurance as a means to help boost domestic consumption. Obviously, for those of us in the public health community, this is attractive policy in terms of reducing financial barriers for people to access the healthcare. I'd be interested to know your perspectives for those in the public finance community. To what extent is this seen as a feasible or viable policy for expanding domestic consumption? And what factors are considered when the public finance community policymakers or thinkers consider this as a viable policy? Thank you.
Okay, on your legal friend, did you raise your hand? Okay, well, let's go to the media. We have CNBC, Bloomberg, CNBC, please.
Hi, thank you. Evelyn Chang from CNBC. Minister Zhu, in your speech earlier, you gave a pretty good overview of the longer-term goals. For my question, I'm wondering what do you think that China can do or need to do in the short term, maybe this year, to help China achieve that longer term growth? And Professor Xu, wondering if you could elaborate a bit on, you mentioned some need for stimulus, but then on the investment side, what would that look like? And just curious more broadly, if there is going to be stimulus in the context of what I'm hearing is local governments really struggling financially to borrow more, asking private businesses for taxes going back to the 1990s. How does the central government address the entire situation? Thank you.
Okay, our friend from CBC, introduce.
Good afternoon. I'm James Megan from Bloomberg News. Thank you very much for the discussion today. My question follows on some of these methods and Professor Xu specifically. You spoke about the need for fiscal stimulus for the housing sector. And I was wondering if you could both rate the policies that have been brought in so far for the new one, and we then you see as a shutdown turning housing into low-cost housing, or local governments buying up houses to turn into low-cost housing. How do you feel those policies will work? Are they enough? And also, specifically, what more can the fiscal authorities do to stimulate the housing market, considering that it is really a demand-side shock that people don't want to buy? It's not a question of supply side that fiscal policy would be better suited to. And my question to the former Deputy Minister Zhu is, we hear a lot of comments from people like Mr. Xu, other market economists, that fiscal policy needs to step up now, and it's the responsibility of fiscal authorities, not the monetary authorities, to do more to help the economy. Former PBC Governor Yi Gang said that recently in the Bonn Forum, and there's a lot of other demands from people, specifically on Moth, to act now to help the economy. For you, is it Moth's responsibility to act now to help China's economy, or is this the responsibility of the PBC? Is this responsibility of other government departments? And if it is Moth's responsibility, what can Moth do now? Thank you.
Okay, Minister Zhu, please.
Follow me regarding that's financial reform, and now I think the picture is clear. We focus on three areas. Number one is budget reform. Second one is regarding the fiscal rational reform, and the third one is relationship between central government and the local government. That's three areas that is very important and equally important. And however, as a timeline, now that's the relationship between central government and the local government should be given more emphasis. That's key. The local government with that real financial support to supporting their functioning, and we want to give some real fiscal power to the local. But that's talk easy, if doing must go through the normal process. And but that's clear point is that already set the clear direction. And currently, that's this year, is some difficult because there's some revenue increase is unexpected, relatively lower than expectation. So now for connected with the CBC issue, short-term efforts must be enhanced, particularly last quarter. Usually last quarter is very key for the economic growth in the whole year. It's higher than the first three quarters. So last quarter efforts should be more strengthened, and through the first three quarters efforts, with that last quarter efforts, we hope that the economic development goal around 5% can be achieved. That's agree very much. That's a very important foundation for we successfully complete the 14th five-year plan. And next year is the last year for 14th five-year plan. And then we can talk about middle term, long term, but short term, we must really focus on to be sure successfully achieve this year 2024 growth goal around 5%. We still have that confidence to reach that goal.
Okay, thank you, Professor Xu.
So, representing Taylor's question about to enhance the social safety, I think that's something we should do, and there are two things we can do. First, I think the aggregately, we can just give more money to the social safety net through this from the state-owned enterprise sectors. You know, in the past, we have a policy that just transfers some state-owned assets to the social security fund to enhance that will help to build a better social safety. And I think that policy can be carried out at a much bigger magnitude, and that will help. That will help. Although that won't have meaningful impact on the short-run economic growth, but I think that is a structural problem, structural policy we need. And another one regarding that from I think is we can just narrow the imbalances in the social segment between rural and urban areas. You know that in the rural areas, the social segment is so much weaker than that in urban areas. So I think most of the money we spend should focus on rural areas, so to close that gap as much as we can. And regarding Chan's question about stimulus on the investment, and I don't have time before to explain. I think now there's no laboratory. That now what we need is a bailout of the central government of the economy. So which means we should spend, central government should spend a lot of money to help the economy back on track. And that money can be spent on two fronts. There are two. Now I think there are two choices. One is you use central government funds to solve the problem of the local government debt problem, and to boost infrastructure investment carried out by the local governments. In the past, the infrastructure investment are mainly carried out by so-called local government financing vehicles. Those are state-owned enterprises set up by local governments. We have thousands of them. But in the past, we have pretty harsh policy regarding to control their funding. And that has led, and also we have this credit funds to go to the property market. And because the land sale revenues makes a lot of part of the local government financing fiscal revenues, that has this downward pressure of the property market has led to the that problem outbroken in the local government. So I think now the central government in the Chinese economy is the only one who has the resource and who has the capability to leverage up, to boost confidence, and to help other sectors to have a better expectation for the future and a stronger expenditure. So I think one way is to use the central government funds to bail out the local government. And actually, that's something we will do. That's something is down the way, but I think that's not the size is not good, not big enough. And another way to spend the central government fund is to help to stabilize the property market, and that comes to the James question. And I think the current policies to stabilize the property market is clearly not enough. I think it's not only the size is not big enough. And, for example, the U.S. announced about 300 billion RMB to buy this existing houses. But you know that I think maybe 3 trillion, I think, will have some meaningful impact. 300 billion is much lower than market expectation. And I think the most important one is that the current policies are not targeted what should be targeted. if you look at the property market, I think it's clear that the property demand has come down significantly. So the property sales has been halved in the past 3 years. But if you look at the composition of the property sales, actually the sales of the pre-sale houses, so the building hasn't completed but already on the market. The sales of the pre-sale housing has come down more than 50%. In the meantime, in the last 3 years, the sales of this existing commodity housing, so the houses that are already built up, actually increased in the last 3 years. So Chinese potential house buyers, they actually continue to buy houses, but they just don't want to buy pre-sale houses because they're afraid that their pre-sale houses cannot be delivered because of the heightened credit risk of the property developers. So I think the key issue in the property market is the heightened credit risk. So in order to stabilize the property market, what the policymakers should do is to curb the credit risk of the property developers, which means you should bail out property developers. And I think that's what we should do to stabilize the property market. And actually, I wrote a report several months ago. Actually, I think if you use fiscal money up to 1 trillion or 2 trillion RMB and use money to bail out property developers, that will help the market to restore the confidence. And as potential house buyers, if they do not afraid that their pre-sale houses will not be delivered, if they do not have that kind of worry, I think the demand for the property will come up. Actually, the first quarter of last year is a very good example. Actually, in the November of year 2022, so the year before last year, we implemented the so-called 3 arrow policies to restore funding to the property developers. And that policies, at least for a moment, just push down the fear of the credit risk of the property developers. So in the first quarter of last year, we see a boom in the property market, a boom of the property sales. But in the second quarter of last year, the Chinese people they found out that the property developers continue to have big trouble, so the demand came down again. So that thing that happened in the first quarter of last year shows us the key thing in the property market is to restore, to help the property developers to curb the credit risk. And I think that's the government should do. And actually, the policies implemented in the last several quarters haven't touched that issue. So that's why I think that the current policy is not enough. And in order to have a stable property market, I think Chinese policymakers should bail out policymakers. If we found that kind of policies implemented, I think the economy and the market will have a very big change. Okay, that's my answer.
Okay, thank you both Mr. Zhu and Professor Xu. Unfortunately, we're running out of time, but I think this is really very stimulating and helpful maybe to give a brief comment, but I don't think we have time to answer that. But next time we're going to have this is a regular roundtable. I know some ambassador probably has some other points, but I think today is really good a policy consultation process. We got policymakers, economists, and think tank scholars, and all of you international ambassador organizations, and also today we have actually 16 ambassadors. We have a number of embassy representatives. For example, we have John Christian from Minister Trade from Canadian Embassy also with us, and many more. So it's really a great occasion, and of course the media. So we're going to continue to do this, and we'll make it more productive. We're going to put it online, and then so more people can have the knowledge of this. And so this is a really good two-way process to have those crucial policy issues to be discussed and debated, and then also serve as a good reference for the government to make some changes as well. So I'm very pleased that all of you are here. And on behalf of Central China Globalization, I'd like to extend very good thanks for all of you, but also let's give a warm thanks to our two speakers. Thank you. So let's have a quick photo together and to remember this very interesting day. Thank you.